Hi, welcome to the 70th edition of the Rider Rumblings video podcast. I'm Rob Vanstone. With me, as always, to my far right, my far left, what a rollicking start. I can't even get my geography correct, is Murray McCormick, our 392-year veteran football scribe.
Dyslexics untie, I always like to say when that happens.
And we're very honored to have with us once again, for the second time, he's decided to subject himself to this, thankfully, Derek Taylor, the voice of the Saskatchewan-roughriders from CKRM, formerly of TSN and other media outlets. Thanks so much, DT, for being with us.
You're welcome.
And
it's great to be here.
He's got the script
microphone.
A trained broadcaster,
yeah, exactly.
I'm wearing my Denver Nuggets hat today in honor of Derek Taylor because my first became a Nuggets fan and a basketball fan because of David Thompson, who was known as DT. So I thought, being that we got DT in studio today, I'm wearing the Nuggets hat, and Murray's wearing the Steeler hat because they somehow won.
We're on a one-game winning streak.
So better than Denver.
Watch out, North Conference. We're coming.
Myriad topics we can discuss with the Rough Riders today, so we'll try to keep this to under 3 hours. Riders in Winnipeg coming up this weekend. It seems like playoff football in early October. DT, what are your thoughts on this game coming up?
By far the biggest game they've had all year. This one determines the season series between the two, and just for some reason, and maybe it's the whomping they took in the Banjo Bowl, I had this kind of sick feeling in the pit of my stomach that, oh no, this might not go well. You know, Chris Streveler is not a good quarterback. That offense in Winnipeg is not doing well. The defense got a nice boost this past week, though you wouldn't have noticed it on the field. I can't shake this sick feeling in the pit of my stomach.
Is it us? And I do apologize.
Well, things ferment over 392 years, right? So it very well could be. I don't know why, because there's no reason to really believe that Winnipeg offense is capable of doing to Saskatchewan what it did in the Banjo Bowl ever again. But it's just maybe that it's such a big game. We talked about on our show, the Sports Game, that the two BC games early on were big games. This is a team that wasn't good. You have to beat them twice. Boom, they did it. You got to beat Ottawa. Okay, they did. You have to smush Toronto into the dirt. You did. You had to beat Winnipeg on Labor Day. You did. This is just another one. And this one, if this goes wrong, then Calgary's on the horizon, and you might lose the tiebreaker to both those teams and then have to go through Winnipeg and Calgary to get to the Grey Cup. That is not a road I would recommend for anybody.
Geez, Dirk, you haven't been here that long, and you're already kind of settled into the pessimistic mode of a Rough Rider that worse things are going to happen. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It only took you to October to get to that
Well, anybody
level.
who's watched this team for a long time is conditioned to expect
Exactly,
that.
and Dirk's still a relatively newbie at this, these expectations of the Riders. I think it's...
As much as Winnipeg just got trashed by Hamilton, we saw what they did in Winnipeg, right? They just 14 plays and 105 yards and ran roughshod over the Riders on that very first drive, and then the first drive of the second quarter, and that game was never really a game.
No.
Whatever reason.
It was over after the third play.
Yeah, so Winnipeg's offense has fallen apart defense has fallen apart the last couple weeks, but Jackson Jeffcoat had 28 quarterback pressures in 4 games, to the point where Craig Rowe, who's a good player, is on the bench. Willie Jefferson is Willie Jefferson. Stephen Richardson, the damage he did against the Riders. Winston Rose is still back there. There's so much talent on that defense that it's like right there. It's just I don't know what to make of it.
They still have Chris Streveler as a quarterback, and Chris Streveler is still a guy you go, I know he engineered that lopsided win.
Yep.
Sort of, kind of, but
Johnny Augustine too, yeah.
Johnny Augustine. I just think that Chris Streveler isn't that good of a quarterback, and I'm come along your lines, and I know the numbers prove me wrong.
Thank you, Murray.
Yeah, I know, and I don't want, they can give him probably billboard material, but I just think the Riders' defense is improving, and I think, against weaker opposition like Toronto's, but I think it's improving too, and I think even with Andrew Harris back, I think they can be better, and if Zach Evans is back this week, which will be, even if he doesn't come back, there's still pretty good front four with the way things are going. So I'm not as pessimistic as you are.
Right.
I think we saw a little maturity in Cody Fajardo against the Argos. I think we saw a little difference growing up. And I know the Argos are the Argos, and Rob nailed it today. They're a bad team and everything else. But Cody just looked a little better, and I think he's growing. And I think we're kind of see Cody Fajardo grow. This will be another chance for him to pass another test to get to the next test, which next test.
And he's passed a bunch of tests already, right? Like 3 game-winning drives so far this season. He's been fantastic. that defense, I mean, just watching that game against Toronto and watching Micah Johnson obliterate people left and right, just takes Tyler Holmes and tosses him aside. And they replayed one where he took Declan Cross and just chucked him 5 yards and then went after Franklin. You're like, man, Micah is absolutely crushing people. Charleston, 15 sacks. AC Leonard really got on fire in that Toronto game. And again, quality of opponent. But to see that from AC Leonard, who I don't think has had a sack since week 5?
Something like that.
Question mark. So Charbel DeBeer should have had 2 sacks in that game. Everybody on that defensive line was just on fire.
Charbel DeBeer pushed the left guard into basically brutalized the left guard, and then, there's a quarterback, I will sack him now. But what he did to the offensive lineman was bordering on the inhumane. This is
Tyler Holmes,
is a lower round draft choice that's coming in as a rookie and doing that to a
He looks stronger than when he did in training camp. I don't know what it is. I remember I was impressed with his speed. He had shown good speed. He looks like the weight program they've got him on here is paying off. I really think that
I'm on a weight program too, but it's not the one.
Can we just give the Riders a little credit now? The East Division's out of the way. They were going 6-2 against these guys when they started off 0-2, and things looked pretty desperate back then. They've pretty well manhandled the East Division. And I know that it's the quality of teams and all that is all part of it and whatnot, but you got to beat the team in front of you.
Yeah.
And Rob will go back many, many years. The Riders don't beat the team in front of them with any regularity.
No, and that's that. I wrote a column on that last week, how that kept them from home playoff games. You look at 03 to 06 and their propensity for losing to bad teams, including being the only team to lose to Hamilton in 2003. That cost them numerous home playoff games because you couldn't take advantage of the free spaces. The Rough Riders have done that. The free spaces are, for the most part, gone now. They still go to BC once, but this gets so good. And I'm with DT here. I look at this Winnipeg team, and I wonder if people are being hasty and being so dismissive on the basis of some ugly showings. But I go back to the 2-game set against Saskatchewan. The Banjo Bowl is well documented. But even the Labor Day Classic, Chris Strevler, for all the criticism he's absorbed, he never got a chance to get back on the field after he marched the Bombers for the go-ahead touchdown.
Yep.
And so even though the point production and the offensive production wasn't high in that Labor Day Classic, Chris Strevler still put his team in position to win. And then the week, 6 days later, it was a mess. And this was done. Johnny Augustine played pretty well, but now Winnipeg is infusing Andrew Harris into the equation for this game. So I think there are reasons to be wary of the Bombers, despite the fact that the last couple of games they have not played well. There's plenty of time for them to recover, and I think they have the arsenal that should enable them to do so.
Their weapons just haven't turned out kind of the way we thought, right? For whatever reason, they don't throw the ball to Darvin Adams. Throw the ball to Darvin Adams. The guy should be 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns every year. Lucky Whitehead, for all the preseason hype and what he did in the preseason game here, had one game against Edmonton, and then it's 30 yards, 20 yards, 15 yards. I think his regular over-under is like 27 yards online. Wow. He's not really a threat. They don't use Nick Dembski. I mean, how can they? Because I think it was great to hear Murray say he's coming around, because everybody will insist to me when I ask them, oh no, Chris Strevler is a good quarterback. Chris Strevler is a interesting and good offensive weapon, but help me out here. You have to be able to throw the ball in the CFL.
He can throw. He have to throw it consistently. Or just when he drops back to pass, I think everyone crosses their fingers, including the receivers.
Yeah,
because you just don't know what's going to happen.
Maybe he should just run, and he's tremendous runner of the football. But what I saw last year when he started for Matt Nichols, when Nichols was hurt early, I thought, oh hey, won the first game. What was it? 3 touchdowns and 2 picks. Sure, but you have to throw the football. You can't survive at 60-40 pass, much less 50-50 or a majority of Andrew Harris. You can't survive on the checkdowns to Andrew Harris and expect to win the Grey Cup. It's not going to do it.
Do the Riders even think about the Grey Cup? I think they got to think about this one, and I know they will, this one game. Because you've said earlier, this is the biggest game of the year. I think,
and it's followed by the next biggest game of the year.
And then then they can coast almost.
Well, I wouldn't say that. The other teams are still going to be playing, and they're still going to be Winnipeg and Calgary.
But this puts them in control of their destiny.
Yeah, and Edmonton's not very good either.
No,
like BC, Edmonton to finish the season. Edmonton is not a particularly good team. Logan Kilgore is not a particularly good substitute at quarterback. So the last 3 games are much easier than these next 2, and fingers crossed, infinitely less important than these next 2.
I don't know what to make of the Bomber defense. Is this the Bomber defense that played very well in back-to-back games against Saskatchewan, or is this the Bomber defense that completely fell apart against Montreal and then basically did the same thing against Hamilton? I look at the Bombers, and they were able, against Montreal, they were able to shut down William Stanback, much like the Rough Riders shut down, or much like Winnipeg shut down William Powell. But as soon as the running back is extracted from the equation because of the defense's preoccupation with stopping the run, the Riders weren't able to counter with an effective air attack, whereas Vernon Adams almost threw for 900 yards, or 500 yards. Yes. So is this a defense that can make you one-dimensional and then squeeze the life out of you, or is this a defense that Vernon Adams and Dane Evans are able to lacerate? I don't understand. I don't know what to make of that Bomber defense recently.
There's so much talent on it between that front 4, Adam Bighill, Winston Rose. Marcus Sales has had a couple of tough games in a row at that boundary halfback spot, but that kid is good. I've always been Chandler Fenner, Anthony Gator. There's a lot. Rios I've just been in watching, seen him have some troubles at that field side corner. Jeff Hecht is Jeff Hecht. He's sometimes Johnny on the spot, but he's a journeyman safety. There's some real talent on there, but they take bend but don't break almost to a super extreme, right? And then all of a sudden they break and we're down 2 touchdowns. There's 0 chance we can come back from that. So they need to be tight. And if Willie doesn't make plays, his 10 batted passes and 6 forced fumbles and 11 sacks, if Willie isn't doing that, someone better pick it up. It's got to. I mean, Jeff Cote off that other end has got to be a real force for them, like he was before he got injured.
But this offensive line, now the Riders have Brendan Labatt back.
Yep.
And it's kind of hard. How do you assess the rotating right guards? I don't know how. What would you think?
It looked,
I think they should be leaving Shepley there, but that's fine.
It looked fine. I went through because I wanted to count, right? And so each guy got, by my count, 28 snaps at right guard, and then Dakota got 12 more at tight end. And there were a couple plays. I didn't watch them all, 40 snaps, super close. But there were a couple where Dakota got whiffed at that tight end spot, which stuff happens. Other guys are good too.
And the Arceneaux touchdown was with him playing tight end too, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
That's very well. Okay, I'll take your word for it because I know you went back and looked at it. So
there's that.
I think honestly, I think it just should be Shepley, and it was Shepley in the first half of that game. And they flop him out to be that tight end in those sets, and they ran that heavy set a ton against Toronto for whatever reason Coach McAdoo wanted it. I think it's got to be Shepley, but I mean, we've seen how many permutations and how many combinations of this line, and it just hasn't mattered. They've all been good. Yeah. And like, wow, this is okay. We'll see better this week and the next week, right? And also, because both Winnipeg and Calgary have real weapons on their lines.
And they're also in a position to get better with Philip Blake due back soon-ish. He's off the cast. He's walking.
Where do you put him?
I know. And Jacoby Cofield is back soon-ish. We don't know for sure. And then Taron Vaughn's been a quite serviceable left tackle, so I don't think that's been a big issue there. But they have a depth, not a problem. How do you call it? A glut of depth? Like, this is great
They've
depth.
got really, and you talked about it on the sports gauge yesterday.
Yeah.
With the trade deadline looming, and you look at the depth on this football team, and I don't see where there's a glaring area of need.
No.
Offensive line, they're
super deep.
They've got a ton quarterbacking. If Fajardo goes down, well, you're not going to be able to fix that via trade.
Yep.
Running back is fine. Receivers, they've got 2 guys who can play who aren't playing.
Running back's a spot. If William Powell got hurt, this is a different team because now you're probably not putting Thigpen in there. You're going to Jamal Wall. Yeah. And we literally haven't seen him play. We know he's super good at coin flips from his college days, but we don't really know what he would look like in a CFL game. Receiver, super deep. Super deep. Defensive line, we've seen it the last few games. Super deep. What we talked about on the show was American defensive backs. If one goes down, that's probably a big hole. And if Derek Moncrief goes down, okay, LJ McCray probably comes down and somebody goes in a field corner. I'm not worried about that. But what if Ed Gainey went down?
Yeah.
Or, I mean,
Lucius Purifoy.
If Purifoy went down, even if Adam went down, it's probably Ailey Buka. Yeah. But Adam is those 4 guys that we talk about, even 5 with LJ. an injury there that end of the season could really cause problems.
But if you look at their roster and their starting lineup as currently constituted, I don't think you can say, okay, trade deadline's coming, let's target this position.
No,
it would
not
take
at
an injury for the depth to become for a trade to become an imperative. And it's not unrealistic to think that there would be one, because this is a violent sport and there's lots of football left to be played. But I look at the roster in general and the way they've been able to fortify themselves virtually across the board.
Yeah.
And that it's impressive what Jeremy O'Day has done as far as constructing a team.
Yeah.
But even like today, they signed Atlee Simon, the former U of R Rams star, and what he can do. So they've already maybe addressed a little bit. Like he didn't do much with Calgary, but it's.
Well, he's still got Keenan LaFrance too, so I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. It's got to be special team to just see what he looks like before maybe looking down 2020, because it's a good time of year to do that kind
but
of
they're
stuff.
They're not at anyone's. Nobody's already got any leverage on the Rough Riders come trade deadline time, unless an injury against Winnipeg really changes things.
And
because
who are you going to trade? Really?
Who do you
Who are you going to trade?
Who would they trade? And they won't trade the receivers. Do you kind of think? And I know this is just a little bit off a tangent here. This depth of receiving is a bit of disruption, because usually by this time of year, your 5 guys are set and you have a 6-guy roadie. Now they have 2 guys sitting there, and we're asking as reporters, what do you think? What do you think? Why isn't JWL on the roster? Why isn't that? Do you think it's a bit of disruption or distraction? Or do you think these guys are mature enough that Craig James is to deal with this sort of competition at really the time of year when it doesn't happen very often?
Yeah, I honestly, I've known Kenny Stafford since he joined the team. He seems like, he's out there smiling all the time, and he's been on the 46, but he's not really sniffed the 45-man roster, right? The game day we're going to play roster, and it's not getting any better with Jordan Williams-Lambert going to come on at some point. So as long as, he sees value in being here, that depth maintains. He was, Christian Jones was enough to get him the first time. If someone needed a receiver, if Calgary went, okay, we just lost Markeith Ambles, and my goodness, we're going to need a body. It's not a Calgary thing, they really do, but would they make a play? Would they even consider trading an offensive lineman? If someone said, hey, we want Darius Bladek, I think they'd just say, go away. Yeah, we like Darius a lot. And as much as he's the 6th man right now, we like him a lot. There's a lot of depth, but there's not really. Where's a spot where someone else in the league is so much dramatically better at that spot? There's a lot of good boundary corners in this league, but Nick Marshall is right up there with any of them. Find me a better field corner than Lucius Purifoy. Good luck. Find me a better Sam linebacker. Double good luck. That defensive line, solid. There's just not one the Riders can make to bring somebody in. Is there someone they'd be willing to part with? But then what would you want in return? What would you want to improve? Or improve the depth of?
I think you almost have to drill down as deep as they could use a better punt returner. That's how loaded they are.
Yeah, fair.
They're not getting any explosive. But that's Marcus Thigpen's fine there. That's not a real crisis. But when you look at their offense and defense, they're in such good shape. And the only real question right now, and it's been alluded to before, is what do you do with that receiver position? It seemed to me to be an automatic flip that when Jordan Williams-Lambert is ready to play, you put him in there instead of Manny Arceneaux. But 2 things have changed that. That touchdown last week showed that he could still get deep, although it helped that he was completely ignored on the play when one of the defensive backs went with Shaq Evans.
Abdul Kana trails Shaq across the middle,
And you saw the response to Emanuel Arceneaux after he scores a touchdown. You tell how much the players love that guy. And you've only lost 1 game with him in the lineup. So is there a how much risk are you inviting by messing with things when Craig Dickinson has just talked about how well the team played? Why do you mess with that dynamic? I realize you've got 2 important games coming, but how do you disrupt that when you're looking at chemistry, you're looking at intangibles, and now you're looking at some elevated production from Manny Arceneaux? How do you tinker with that as good as Jordan Williams-Lambert is? I really wonder if they can do that in terms of the dynamic. Why mess with this?
Well, and how much is the step up from Naaman to Jordan Williams-Lambert? Like every time I watch Naaman,
you can't sit Naaman.
I go, man, this guy he gets it. Oh, there's that hole in the zone. Boom, he finds it. He sits there. He was the 3rd leading receiver in this past game, just barely behind, like not too much behind what Kyron, and then Manny was the leader.
And on second down, it's money.
There's something to be said for physical skills, and there's something to be said for just being smart with literally a young quarterback. And you have, I've said it on the show. I've said it. You can have Naaman off the roster when you pry him out of my cold dead hand.
Yeah, yep. You don't mess with that.
But he's one of the names Coach Dickinson threw out, right? Yeah, and you're like, really? Okay.
As you watch Saturday's game progress, Naaman got better and better, and I kept thinking I watched how he played. Thinking, I'm going to have to ask Manny that question. What does he feel like with his competition in October for position, which he took umbrage with? But it was blatantly obvious. You can't take Naaman Roosevelt off that roster. I don't think you can.
Can you take Manny Arceneaux off that roster?
I don't think you can.
I think
Maybe
status
for
quo.
Injuries or diminished
status
production.
quo maintains another week. I honestly think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to maintain, go with what they've got, unless JWL lights it up in practice. Basically has to light it up on a Wednesday when we can't see it.
Yeah.
Because they really don't do a lot on day 1 or day 3 or in the walkthrough. So.
It's interesting that he wasn't in there this past week.
I
know. And I know they talk about status quo and stuff, but was there for a week of practice, the bye week. He went home, but presumably was studying everything a professional football player would do. Was back for the last week and not on the roster yet. It's like, well, 3 weeks back in the system you played in last year, and sure, there's tweaks and it's different because it's not all screens and checkdowns. Why isn't he in there already is an interesting question, and not one we're going to get a real good answer to. But is it really they don't want to mess with the 5 because they've messed with 5-man units before? Beginning of the season, offensive line looked good. We want to run Taron Vaughn through there. So he was at right tackle, he was at left tackle, and then he was ready when Jacoby went down. They've messed with units before in trying to figure out what's the right one. I wonder how long, if he doesn't get in this week and they beat the Bombers, he's probably not in for the Calgary game. And if Calgary takes them to the woodshed again, unfortunately, then, you're going to see Jordan Williams-Lambert in at that point. But is this Coach Dickinson going, we don't need it yet? And will it eventually become Jeremy O'Day going, hey, by the way, we're paying this guy a bunch of money, so let's go.
I think the key part of that whole statement is the beginning of the season. That's when you fool around with the roster. In October, this is when gelling, other than injuries, force you to make moves. You're building this team.
Or a loss can force you to miss them.
If they'd lost to Toronto, we would be having a whole lot of different discussions today.
Are they the counter to the you really need to gel and you really need to work as a unit? Because when was the last time you saw a team rotate an offensive lineman in and out there like you saw in this past game? I just watching them this season and going, well, you had 5 different O-line combinations in the first 6 games because you wanted to try some stuff out. I wonder if that stuff is just things that coaches kind of tell the media. Oh no, you need continuity. When you know what, you just need guys who are smart and can get in there, and then each guy brings their own thing to it. Is this gelling thing just kind of a cover that we use for? You know what? Sometimes they're not very good.
Well, you go back in time, and I'm really old. I remember when teams, when they wanted to send in a play, they'd use messenger guards.
Right.
And so comes the guards are alternating, and they're bringing in the play from the sideline. So if you go back 30, 40, 50 years, that theory about continuity was debunked by the mere existence of the messenger guard.
And the right-left thing, like Dakota was a left guard, then he went back to his natural right guard. Like, these guys are, as much as you're probably not, Taron Vaughn's been both tackles this year. As much as, okay, you're the backup and you have to do what you got to do to get in the lineup. A lot of it seems like, hey, if you have talented players and you have a good coach and these guys are smart, you can do a lot of things with them. You can run in different 5 receiver packages. So it seems like the Riders are showing us you can run in different 5 offensive lineman packages too.
Or 7, as the case may be. 2 of their 3 touchdown passes on Saturday were with a 7-man front.
Yeah. Good old Albert Awachi is the difference
I love
maker.
Albert Awachi.
Absolutely.
I think he's the most unsung player on the team.
He hammers some blocks, and then he made a catch. What a second ever catch. It was so great.
Against Ottawa, he found a linebacker and drove the guy right out of the TV screen.
Yeah.
Rewatched the play, and he got the guy about 3 or 4 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, and just took him into a different area code while William Powell was running the ball.
Yeah.
Albert Awachi is tremendous, and nobody really talks about him, but he's doing those little things that Rob Cote used to do for Calgary.
Spencer Moore did a lot of those things too.
Yep.
Never had a touchdown, but Spencer Moore contributed in a similar manner. But I think Albert Watchy. I agree with you. He's one of the guys no one ever talks about.
Here's a question. I know it came up on the Sports Cage on Monday. Who's the Rough Riders' most outstanding player? And Murray's going to address this. I think it's Albert Watchy.
One catch for 8 yards and several smart blocks.
To be perfectly, I know who.
I think it's Cody Fajardo,
and
but
it's not
there's
even-
also a Charleston Hughes case to be made.
Yeah.
Charleston Hughes is on 15 sacks right now. The all-time record is 23. The second most in a CFL season ever. John Bowman once had 19. If Charleston Hughes has 20 sacks and the media and coaches don't vote him as the MOP, we're doing it wrong. This guy is on the verge of a historic season. He's played 12 games and has 15 sacks.
But
That's
If they don't have
ridiculous.
but you take Charleston Hughes away from the equation, might they be in a similar position?
Oh, I don't know about
they
that.
won their one game that Charleston
Wasn't
Hughes didn't
out-
play.
Yeah. So you take Cody Fajardo out of this situation, and they're 4-9.
Are you forgetting how high we were on Isaac Harker in week number 2?
I was never.
They're going to split reps. We're going to throw both Cody and Isaac out there, and then Cody lights it up, and we never see Isaac again.
Well, it's-
They were high on Isaac Harker. You remember how we were all talking to Isaac Harker? We're like, oh my goodness, he beat out Watford. This is
Get
the
him in
Colorado
there.
School of Mimes.
Take
No
him.
minds. Oh right,
Do we need to bring back up how bad Watford was? No.
absolutely not. But yeah, if a guy, and maybe it's because there is already a award for defensive players that will end up going. Fajardo is the MOP, and Charleston is the team. Or
Well, last year, Willie Jefferson
defense
was
player?
the MOP. Wasn't he the MOP last
yeah,
year?
who else was it going to be though?
Yeah, there wasn't really
No
a
one was
contender on offense.
No.
Trey Mason didn't quite
Because
measure up
it has happened
contribution-wise.
here before. I'm saying it's still a precedent, but
Yeah.
I just think without Cody Fajardo, where would the Riders be? And it's not the where would the Riders be outstanding award. It's the most outstanding player award.
Right.
But I don't think you can subtract him from this scenario. And you really, what more can you ask? He's upper echelon quarterback this year with these guys. I think sort of graphic that they with the top 3 quarterbacks, and he's one of the guys. And,
Yeah.
and he's doing it all. Even and he beats the bad teams. And he's we'll see what happens down the stretch. I could have a great to do with. Just remember last year, Charleston Hughes got to 13 sacks. And where was he after that? I don't know if he broke down or got tired or something happened that he didn't end up. We only ended up
His
with
sack slowed down the second half of last
Yeah.
season for sure. His
But he has
quarterback
Micah
pressure's held up.
Yeah, but you have Micah Johnson in there this year that's going to keep. And
Mike is killing people. Oh,
Yeah,
remember it's funny.
that's what they're paying for.
I talked to him earlier about when he had his first sack, and he says, last year he had 6 sacks in the first half of the season. He had 8 in the second, and he had all of his numbers. His big numbers were in the second half of the season.
yeah.
So and guess who won the Grey Cup with a strong. Because I remember writing about him. He was unstoppable last year. He was just a whole other league of defensive tackle, and not built like a defensive tackle, built like a defensive end, a big defensive end. So if he keeps going, and you expect him to keep plugging away, he's just going to be. He's going to be the guy.
He terrorized Franklin on a play where 3 guys hit him, and he was straight double team. But even the tackle, Randy Richards, hit him, and then he ran right through left side, so that makes it Tyler Holmes and Sean McEwen. Sean McEwen, I mean, is a well thought of center.
Yeah.
He just obliterated those 2 guys and got Franklin. You're like, this is inhuman. This is unbelievable. And I brought this up on the show yesterday. What the counter will be to is Charleston the MOP. Someone will certainly say, "Hey, what happened in those 2 games where Micah didn't play and Charleston zeros held off the board?" Like, interesting.
Might have to use that.
Something to think about. Well, and then on the flip side, you go, well, Charleston, 15 sacks. If he gets to 20, for me, no brainer. But he's going to set a career high in tackles as well. He's got 41 tackles. His career high is 46. When you think of Willie Jefferson, Willie has 20 tackles. He's got all his past bat downs and 2 more forced fumbles. Charleston has 41 tackles. That's a fantastic number. 1 for a defensive end, and 2 for a guy his age. And he'll never talk about his age, but a guy his age, that's a great number.
What about Cody's 13?
Phenomenal.
Cody's 13 passing touchdowns, 9 rushing touchdowns, or 10
now.
And last year they had how many touchdowns combined?
They had 25
25.
offensive touchdowns, and Cody Fajardo's been single-handedly part of 23 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Who was quarterback for a bunch of last year, and where's he in the league right now? Not in the league? Okay.
yeah.
Which brings me to a question that Jordan Klamosko has posed. We invite questions every week, and we actually got some this week, so I want to make sure I acknowledge them. Jordan asked, basically, is Zach Collaros going to play for the Argos at some point as a current or perhaps former denizen of Collaros Island?
Still on Collaros Island.
Derek, what can you tell us about Zach Collaros' status in Toronto?
Well, he was throwing. We saw the reports. He was throwing in practice this past week. He was on the sidelines for the game. They threw in James Franklin for who knows what reason in that game because McLeod Bethel-Thompson looked bad against Calgary. Yeah, thanks. Everybody looks bad against Calgary. But there's a lot of problems, I think, in that Toronto squad. He's got to get a shot at some point this season because they need to know, hey, I think all three of them are free agents. Hey, what do we have? And what does Zach have? Because Zach, I mean, this guy wants to play some football, or else why would he be putting himself through all this? So I think you have to give him a shot and try to block a little better.
I just want a quick comment about it. I noticed with Zach before the game on Saturday, all the riders coming up to him, hugging him, shaking him down.
Oh, yeah.
I really noticed that there was a lot of the embracing and stuff. And I kind of surprised because he wasn't here for that long and stuff, but there was a lot of respect being shown by the riders for him. So that was kind of an interesting.
Wayne Grolo with a question. How many wins do you think it will take for the Riders to get a home playoff game? Thank you, Wayne, for the question. Again, Derek will
one
will
more
answer
ever
it for you.
finishes third.
So everybody's on 9.
Yeah.
You have to get ahead of Winnipeg, so 10. Winnipeg's got Calgary twice. My goodness, I think Montreal's in there. Probably 12 again.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be 12 again. You beat BC for 10. You pray you're going to beat Edmonton twice, 12. 13 may be good enough. Well, 13 might not be even good enough to win the division.
Isn't that amazing?
You're going to have to win the head-to-head with Calgary, so beat them by 28. So I think 12 is the number to get a home playoff win.
Are you kind of conceding first place to Calgary a little bit? Even though Bo Levi supposedly hasn't been as high, they're still at 4-0 with him at the quarterback now?
Yeah, his accuracy numbers haven't been great, but things have been going.
But the big number is 4-0.
Yeah.
I'm
kind of on the Luke Mullender bandwagon of, Calgary's going to win it. And it just feels like it, right? Bo's back. They held fast while he was out. Through all the running back injuries, through all the other injuries, they found this amazing defense. Like, yikes. Just because they have such a substantial advantage on the Riders, I kind of do hand it to them, unless Winnipeg pulls out something miraculous in their back-to-back.
But Riders have to go to Calgary and win by 28 to win that season series. Otherwise, they got to win one more game than a formidable Calgary squad down the stretch, and that might be a tall order when you're talking about Calgary.
Game is more realistic, not being the West Division champion. So
yeah, I think
the
that's
home
fair.
second place is the number. So
this is the burning question. I heard this on the sports cage, and I still remember where I was. I was walking across the little bridge around Wascana Lake, closest to Broad Street, and Derek was talking about throwing stones
at a hawk.
At a hawk, and ended up. I'm not going to ruin the story.
Yeah.
I laughed honestly all the way from there to the legislative building. It's the funniest thing I've ever heard on radio. How did this happen, and how is the poor bovine?
So during the bye week, my wife said, I want to go to Cypress Hills, southwest part of the province, everybody? Okay. First time, so I thought, okay, sure. I don't love the thought of driving 5 hours, but I've never seen it before. Let's go. We stayed at this beautiful bed and breakfast just outside of Cypress Hills, and the gentleman there, Jim, it was a farm, so he had cows and he had horses, and then he had a bunch of doves that would just fly through and park in the barn and hang out for a bit. But with doves, Murray, with doves, you got to be worried about hawks.
Oh, do you? Okay.
So we're out on Wednesday morning, and there's this hawk just swooping around, chasing the doves, and Jim was getting worried. Oh boy, these doves, he just snatches them and takes them off. So I hope they can get away. I thought, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take a rock. I'm gonna throw it at this hawk. See if I can get him out there. I thought, okay, this sounds like a great idea. Obviously, in no way did I expect I was going to hit the hawk, but I thought, hey, I'm just gonna throw a rock at it because it would be fun for the 11-year-old Derek to throw a rock at this hawk. So I pick up a rock, and this feels like a Dr. Seuss story I should work on with a good writer about a rock and a hawk. And he was coming down low enough that he was maybe, 50 feet off the ground. I thought, okay, well, maybe I can put a real good scare into him. And there's 11-year-old me with a rock in his hand, ready to go. And I look up, and here comes this hawk, and I reach back to throw it. And as I come through, my shoulder goes, let go of the rock, and it 20 feet in the air. And I clench over in pain. And this rock, it's coming down somewhere. I just hope it's not on my head. And it misses the hawk. Hawk's long gone. It comes down, and it cracks this little small baby cow in the head. And the cow's like, what happened? Then it goes back to being concerned with his own life. I'm like, oh.
So that was a check. You checked down to the cow from the hawk, basically.
Yeah, Strevler Nation.
Strevler Nation.
Yeah, so it was not my proudest moment. Made me realize I need to start throwing lefty, I guess, because my right shoulder is just...
Is it still
breakfast
sore?
cereal. You can't really right about there, Mur. Like right there. It's about the extent of it.
I wanted to get to the bottom of hitting the cow in the head. I thought that was I
little...
just started laughing when I heard that. So.
Too bad you hit it in the bum, and then it would have been a bum steer.
Oh, look at that. Every day in the leader post, Murray McCormick turns a phrase like that one.
Unless there's any final thoughts.
Are the Riders winning the Grey Cup?
I'm still...
Put a percentage on it right now.
20?
20.
For reasons previously articulated, I still think Calgary has got to be the front runner, but who thought the Riders would even be in the conversation this time of year? So I'll give them 20 and Calgary the other 80.
From the top...
Calgary 80, Hamilton... Calgary 60... Calgary 50, Hamilton 30, Saskatchewan 20.
From the top until you get to the bottom league-wide, Murray, tell me the teams in order that are likely to win the Grey Cup.
Likely to win
until
the
you get to the Riders, and then just stop because no one cares after that.
Likely to win. Well, I am going to go, holy smokes. Calgary, Hamilton.
Okay.
Riders.
Okay, and then Winnipeg in behind the Riders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might go Hamilton, Calgary, just because Hamilton's path is easier.
Yeah.
Like Hamilton's 4 wins clear of Montreal. They have the home playoff spot sewn up. Calgary could lose to the Riders. They could lose. I mean, it would be, I'd blow my hair back, but they could lose twice to the Bombers or lose the season series to the Bombers, which would be a disaster for them. Yeah, Hamilton, Calgary. And I just, like I said, I had this sick feeling in the pit of my stomach that Saturday might not go well. And I don't know that it's based on anything because I'm with you guys. I don't think that Winnipeg offense is good, and maybe this Paul LaPolice magical creature and able to conjure up things that I've created in my head maybe has been disproven now because even with Matt Nichols, they had the fewest passing yards in the league per game. It's there for me, and I don't.
Do you think they could spiral down to even being the crossover team from this? If this is a loss,
oh my God, that would be a dream. And I'm waiting for Zach Evans. I'm waiting to talk to Zach Evans about that again. But we were talking to him one day in a scrum, just to take this on a bit of a tangent, and he was saying, "You guys think the crossover is easy? No one's ever taken the crossover and gone to the Grey Cup." When was the last? So I'm waiting for that. And Zach, if you're watching, you will be prepared for my retort. When was the last time a team 3rd or 4th in their division went to the Grey Cup? Even if they went through the regular path. It was 2005 because the number 3, number 4 teams don't get through. So it's not like the East is any harder. It's just, man, what would you guys rather do? Would you rather go through, if you're Saskatchewan, you happen to finish 3rd or 4th? Would you rather go through at Winnipeg, at Calgary, or at Montreal, at Hamilton?
B. And I look at 2 years ago.
But we were there.
The Riders were 1 play away from
James
accessing
Wilder.
the Grey Cup via the crossover route.
And Cody Fajardo.
That's right.
If I can take the easier path and not have to slog it out on possibly cold, frozen fields in November, if I can avoid that West situation, I'd rather finish 4th and 3rd in the West.
Yeah, and
get the home playoff game if you can.
That's absolutely. I would rather play the easier teams. Luke Mullender said to me, "You know what? There's something to playing in familiar circumstances." Yeah. So he said yesterday he would rather play the harder teams in more familiar circumstances than perhaps the easier route in less familiar circumstances. Where, are we staying the extra week from Montreal and Hamilton? You know, are we just going to stay out east and have to deal with that? And do I have to pack for 2 weeks? And oh my goodness, this is awful. He said there's a real mental component to it, which I'd never considered before. But the easier route team-wise is absolutely through the east. But that no one has done it is not an indictment that the crossover is super tough, because 2005 Edmonton as a 3rd seed was the last team to get to the Grey Cup as a 3 or a 4 seed. So it's hard for everybody.
Murray, do you want to send us out with a flourish here? We have to read this. It is mandated by Post Media Inc.
If you enjoy the podcast, and I can't see how you wouldn't have enjoyed today's, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. It helps us grow the podcast. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Are there places to get podcasts?
There's a thing on this phone that just says podcasts.
Okay.
Apple Podcasts.
So that's how I listen to the Sports Cage on delay.
If you'd like to send us a question, you can email Rob at rvanstone@postmedia.com and we'll read it on the show. You can follow Rob on Twitter at Rob Vanstone, or me at Murray LP, or Derek at
DT on SC.
And you can have all your rider news at your thumbs.
Awesome. Murray, thank you. DT, thank you so much for being with us. It's an honor to have you in our presence as always.
Thank you for having me. I didn't even get to drop my great Cody Fajardo stat, but maybe
do it.
listen to the
One big number.
Time for one big number.
Da-da-da-da.
One big number for this podcast is 17 out of 18. Cody Fajardo, in games with under 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter this season, is 17 for 18 passing for 169 yards. His 94% completion rate is by far the highest in the CFL. That number blew my mind, that he is that efficient. Now, it's no touchdowns and no interceptions, but I couldn't believe 17 of 18 with under 3 to go in the fourth. When you think of the under 3 minute situations they've had in the fourth quarters this season.
He was nearly that efficient against the Argos, wasn't he?
Only
23 of 27?
23 for 27. First time I've seen that since August 15th, 1976, Ron Lancaster versus Edmonton, 40-0. I saw 23 for 27. I thought, that sounds like 43 years ago. Wow. Murray, Derek, thank you so much. My name's Rob. Our producer is Mark Melnichuk. Thank you again, Mark, for doing this for us. And thank you for joining us. We'll do this next week. This is podcast number 70. I forgot to do the player.
Yeah, there's no numbers.
Steve Mazurek, Gary Doolin, Pete Martin. Those are former Rider players wearing number 70. So there. I got it in. I almost forgot. We'll do number 71.
So this is going to be officially the end right now?
This is officially the end. We'll do number 71 next week if they'll still have us. So thank you so much, and have a great day. Take care.